Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be looking at Joker, which came out back in 2019. This film is very different from a lot of the other comic book movies we're seeing during this time. It almost feels like a movie being ripped straight out of the 70s, with it being extremely violent and dealing with some pretty dark and heavy themes. And that's essentially what director Todd Phillips was trying to go for. He wanted to make a character study first and foremost, and wanted to make a film that was similar to a Martin Scorsese film. For example, Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, which are both some of his best works. It's great movies on top of a bunch of other great movies that he's done. Unfortunately, everything that Joker tries to do is handled much better in both Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. I will say though that this film is shot beautifully and the score is just really haunting, and of course Joaquin Phoenix, he delivers just an incredible performance. But yeah, the film itself just feels very derivative of both Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and it doesn't really add much to what those two films are trying to say. This film is more about bringing up the topics of mental illness and class warfare, but it's not really interested in providing any concrete answers to the themes and problems that it's bringing up. And I think this wouldn't have bothered me so much, but it came out in 2019, the same year we got Knives Out and Parasite. Both films also dealt with class warfare and also had a lot to say on those matters. If you've seen those films, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, it kind of just pales in comparison when dealing with said themes, when, you know, looking at other films that came out both in that year and also the films that are that Joker was inspired by. It doesn't really reach that same level. But I'm glad that someone wanted to take a risk and, you know, try and make a very serious, grounded character study within like the comic book movie landscape, because that's a really interesting idea, and I'm glad that someone wanted to try and do that. So I do applaud the film for, you know, being something that's different and something that audiences probably wouldn't have seen otherwise, you know. But you know, if someone, you know, watched Joker and was like, hey, I want to go watch Taxi Driver or King of Comedy, you know, the movies that inspired this, I think that's great. You know, I really hope that this movie broadened other people's horizons and made people fall in love with different types of movies. So if that happened to someone, I'm glad this movie exists for that reason. But how many kills can we find in this darker and more serious comic book film? Well, let's get into the movie and find out. The movie opens in this weird, cheap-looking set. Basically, the Joker has arrived and has crashed a fundraiser Bruce Wayne is holding for the District Attorney of Gotham, who is Harvey Dent. Here, the Joker terrorizes party guests before saying his iconic catchphrase.
Well, I'm the Joker, baby.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What? This isn't the movie. Oh. The actual movie opens with the classic Warner Brothers logo to help set the vibe that this is gonna feel like a 70s film, motherfucker, so strap in. We are immediately introduced to Arthur Fleck, a clown for hire working for a company called Ha-Ha's. Get it? Cause he's what he's tasked to do is wave a sign around on the street and get some customers in. I will say this, I like that this film starts character first. We're immediately introduced to Fleck and how miserable he is. It's impossible for him to put on a happy face. He then gets to work, spinning and twirling the sign before a group of no-good teens rip his sign away. Fleck catches up to the teens in an alleyway before they hit him with it, and all hell breaks loose. The teens then leave Fleck to cry alone on the floor before we're introduced to a larger-than-life title card. The score by Icelandic composer Hildur I'm not even going to try and say that. I am so sorry. I know I would butcher it. I will play a clip of her saying her name.
Hildur Guðnadóttir.
I think she's fantastic. The score is by far my favorite part of this whole film. It just creates this droning and eerie atmosphere and helps highlight the twisted, more demented nature of this story. She deservedly won the Academy Award for Best Original Score for her work on this film. We then catch up with Fleck as he talks with a social worker. He needs to get some medication for his mental health issues, and while he's there, he talks a bit about his future career goals.
I think I told you I'm pursuing a career in stand-up comedy.
Afterwards, he catches a bus and heads on home. Arthur tries to entertain a kid, much to their mom's annoyance. Afterwards, Arthur bursts out into a laughing fit and hands the mom a card that explains his condition. Joaquin Phoenix has gone on record saying that the most challenging part of this role was figuring out how to do the iconic Joker laugh. Phoenix ended up basing the laugh off of what he saw in videos of people suffering from pathological laughter, which is a real-life disorder that causes someone to burst out laughing and have laugh attacks whenever they are put in a tense or stressful situation, much like what Arthur Fleck has in this movie. At Arthur's apartment, we are introduced to his mother, Penny. We learn that she used to work for Thomas Wayne and has been writing letters to him but has yet to hear back. Together, the two watch The Murray Show. Oh, no, not that one. This one is hosted by Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro, who needs absolutely no introduction. Arthur begins to imagine himself in the show and manages to get Murray's attention. Murray allows Arthur to come on stage and tells him he'd love to have a kid like Arthur. Aw, isn't that sweet? Back at Arthur's work, his co-worker Randall has taken notice to the bruises he's sustained from the assault the previous morning. Randall then decides to give Arthur a gun to defend himself because America. Arthur initially refuses, but Randall assures him that it's for his own safety. Heading back up to his apartment, Arthur is joined in the elevator by his neighbor Sophie, played by Zazie Beetz, and her daughter Gigi. Sophie jokingly talks about how terrible the building is and does something that's not advertiser friendly. Please don't do that again. This causes Arthur to immediately become obsessed with her. But before he can talk with her again, he needs to enjoy some private time with him and his gun because once again, America. Anyway, Arthur then begins to stalk Sophie, but stops when she goes somewhere he doesn't feel comfortable going. So he instead heads to a comedy club where he begins to laugh at off moments as the comedian is telling his jokes.
So I'll tell you how I operate. I'm a professor at a prestigious New England university.
The next morning, Sophie finally confronts Arthur about the other day and asks if he's been stalking her. Arthur comes clean about this, but surprisingly, Sophie isn't mad about that. So Arthur then invites her to come to a comedy show that he'll be performing at, which she agrees to go to. Arthur, now performing at a children's hospital, accidentally drops his gun on the floor, which ultimately costs him his job. His boss also tells Arthur that Randall told him that Arthur tried to buy a gun off of him the previous week, forcing us to question how much of what we're seeing is actually happening. Arthur, depressed about everything that's happened, is now riding the subway home only to be joined by some really annoying drunk men. The men begin to harass a girl, which is interrupted when Arthur starts to burst out laughing. The men then turn their attention to Arthur before beating the shit out of him. However, things don't turn out the same way as they did in the opening scene. Arthur fires and kills two of the men here before following the last man out of the subway and kills him as he begs for his life. Scared, Arthur hides in a public restroom before breaking out into an elegant dance routine. He's finally in control of his life. This newfound confidence leads him to Sophie, who he embraces and makes out with. The next morning, the murders have hit the news and Thomas Wayne is being interviewed about it. Apparently, the three men worked for Wayne, and he states that the murderer was clearly jealous of the men's wealth, causing Arthur to laugh at him. Whether or not this laugh is genuine is left up to interpretation. We then catch up with Arthur having his next meeting with his social worker. Arthur begins to vent his frustrations about her and says she doesn't ever listen to him and that people are finally starting to notice him. His social worker doesn't respond to any of that and shoots back that their funding has been cut and this will be their last meeting, leading Arthur to question where he'll get his medication now. But maybe he can find some solace in performing comedy, especially since this is his dream. He walks on stage and begins laughing. I hope the rest of the audience finds his act funny. Hey, at least it looks like Sophie does, so, you know, that's good. The two then walk around the streets of not New York City after Arthur's performance. I have it written as New York in the script. It's not New York, it's Gotham. I don't know why I wrote that. But hey, you can't really blame me for thinking that this is New York City, especially since this version of Gotham is directly inspired by the Empire City and how it looked during the 80s and 70s. They even filmed in New York to capture a more dark and gritty feel.
Very kind of run down, broken down city on every level. And that was exciting to us as a place to put this character and a place to sort of explore.
Of course, there were also some visual effects work that needed to be done to help give Gotham its own unique identity.
And where the camera can't reach, that's where VFX takes over. It's using New York City as Gotham, but you have to take away the things that are particularly iconic about New York City. And so we're swapping out some buildings and making things look dreary, weather-worn, tired. It's creating this background that you always feel but never look at.
The two see a man wearing a clown mask riding in the back of a taxi, and Arthur begins to smile. Arthur then returns home to find his mom has fallen asleep watching TV. He discovers that she had written yet another letter to Thomas Wayne. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he takes a look at it and comes to a shocking discovery. He might be the son of Thomas Wayne. Arthur, enraged, confronts his mother about this, who tells him that she could never talk about it, but they were very much in love. This leads Arthur to try and talk with Wayne himself. He reaches Wayne Manor and meets a young Bruce Wayne. Their meeting is cut short when the Wayne's butler, Alfred, approaches the gates and confronts Arthur himself. Alfred tells Arthur that his mother and Thomas Wayne were never in love, causing Arthur to briefly lash out at him. Thankfully, we don't have to add Alfred onto our count though. Arthur then returns home to find his mother being taken out on a stretcher. At the hospital, he is approached by two officers. One of them is played by Bill Camp, and the other is played by the one and only Shea Wiggum. The officers begin to ask Arthur about why he got fired from his previous job, suspecting him to be responsible for the murders on the subway. But Arthur refuses to answer their questions and heads back inside. As Arthur stays by his mother's side, The Murray Show begins to play on TV. Arthur is surprised and delighted to see that his performance is being featured on the program. But instead of praising him, Murray begins to mock him and calls him a joker.
When I was a little boy and told people I was going to be a comedian, everyone laughed at me. Well, no one's laughing now.
You can say that again, pal.
Arthur Fleck will remember that. Sometime later, Arthur pushes his way through a protest in front of Wayne Hall and manages to enter the building. Arthur manages to confront Wayne in the men's room, which, by the way, is the best possible place to talk to a politician. Wayne tells Arthur that he's not his father, but knows that his mother was committed to Arkham Asylum around the time that Arthur was born. This causes Arthur to have another laughing fit, and Wayne punches him in response. Also, I know people are gonna come at me for this. I know in the film it's supposed to be Arkham State Hospital, but fuck that. We know it's Arkham Asylum. It's the same place. God damn it. All right, I'm gonna call it Arkham. I'm calling it what I know it as, just like how I called Gotham New York City. Later, Arthur is getting constant scam calls from quote-unquote the police, who once again want to ask him some questions. God, it's so annoying. However, that changes when a representative of the Murray Show calls him and asks if he wants to be on their program, which Arthur immediately agrees to. Arthur then heads over to Arkham Asylum, where he asks for a file on his mother. The clerk he's talking to, named Carl, is played by Brian Tyree Henry, who is an incredible actor from the show Atlanta, and he also voices Officer Jefferson Davis in the Spider-Verse films. Carl finally finds the file on Arthur's mother and tells him some of what he finds, but Carl refuses to read any more of the file, and this causes Arthur to steal it from him and read the rest himself. Arthur then learns that he was adopted while his mom worked for the Waynes as a housekeeper. Penny also raised Arthur with an abusive boyfriend who seems to have caused Arthur's disorder. This sends Arthur into another emotional slump, which leads him to one of the only places he can find any sort of comfort.
What are you doing in here?
Oh shit. So yeah, it turns out that Arthur imagined their relationship. A twist that actually kinda works, but it makes a lot of sense if you really listen to the insane shit she said while they were together.
I think the guy that did it is a hero. 3 less pricks in Gotham City.
We don't see Sophie again after this scene, leaving us to figure out if Arthur killed her or not. Personally, I don't really see a reason why he would kill her in this moment, and we also don't see a body, so she will not be added to the count. You know what they say about people who assume. Arthur then returns to his mother's side in the hospital, and he is clearly upset. Arthur then adds his mother onto the count by suffocating her with a pillow in one of the film's darkest moments. But who gives a fuck about any of that? We got a show to rehearse for, motherfuckers! Arthur begins to practice his entrance to the Murray show and does... Hey, what did we say about doing things that are not advertiser friendly? Please stop that. Please, I would like to be monetized. So please, I would appreciate it if you would stop that. Arthur then gets into full clown makeup, ready to head on down for the show, when a couple of his old co-workers stop by his house. One of these guys being Randall, the guy who gave him the gun earlier. Arthur, still being pissed off at Randall, proceeds to fucking murder him by stabbing him with a pair of scissors before bashing his head into a wall. This scene is incredibly graphic for this film and helps to set up the film for a more violent third act. And this immediately makes us worried for this other guy whose name is Gary, and I didn't mention him earlier in the video because I forgot. But he's nice to Arthur, which is also the reason why he's allowed to leave. Afterwards, Arthur finishes getting ready, and we get the now iconic dance down the stairs sequence. The detectives aren't a fan of his dance moves and begin to chase after him. The chase ends on the subway. The officers accidentally shoot one of the protesters, and then the other protesters start fighting the cops, and this all gives Arthur some time to escape. Arthur is now sitting in a makeup chair when Murray and his assistant enter. His assistant Gene, played by comedian Mark Maron, immediately tells Murray that this is a bad idea and wants Arthur to take the makeup off due to the recent murders. Arthur acts all innocent and oblivious to the murders, which Murray believes. Before Murray leaves the room, Arthur makes one final request.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Murray then does what Arthur asked and introduces Joker to come out on stage. Murray asks Joker to tell everyone a joke, which he agrees to.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
It's the police, ma'am. Your son's been hit by a drunk driver. He's dead.
Joker then apologizes for his joke before admitting to killing the guys on the subway. Also, I just love how the audience just starts booing him. No cops coming in to arrest him or any security, none of that. It's just the audience being really, really disappointed. Imagine if Jimmy Fallon had the Zodiac Killer on his show and this happened. Like that just sounds insane. Oh wait. Murray, realizing that Joker is serious, asks why they should believe him. Joker responds by saying he's got nothing left to lose and that they deserve to die because they were awful people. Murray then tells Arthur that not everyone is awful, but Joker responds by telling one last joke.
What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash.
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get.
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve.
So yeah, he shoots Murray in a scene that I cannot show fully here, but it is violent. Holy shit. Yeah, especially for like a comic book movie of this level. Yeah, it's pretty violent, I would say. We then cut to Arthur, who is now in the back of a police car, and it's safe to assume he probably got arrested after the audience finished booing him. They are driving past more riots and protests on the street when all of a sudden a fucking ambulance crashes into their car. These two officers are going on the count because goddamn. It's then revealed that this ambulance was also driven by some of the protesters who rescue Arthur from the police car. Meanwhile, the Waynes exit a movie theater to find the streets in a panic. A clown protester approaches them, and we add Thomas and Martha Wayne onto our count. Of course, these two had to die. It's a Batman film. It's the law. Arthur finally comes to and finds himself surrounded by fellow protesters. He then stands upon the hood of the car and gives himself a big blood smile as he finally feels love for the first time. Aww. Don't say aw. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, we cut to Arthur, who is now locked up in Arkham Asylum as he talks to a new social worker. Arthur says he wants to tell her a joke, but that she wouldn't get it. and we then cut to Bruce Wayne looking over the bodies of his parents. Again, this is another moment left up to the audience's interpretation. Is this joke about Bruce, or was it that this movie was a lie and made up by Arthur? I actually kind of like that we're not given an answer about this. It adds this unpredictable element to Fleck and makes him feel like a wild card character, that we'd normally associate with the character of the Joker. We then cut back to Arthur as That's Life by Frank Sinatra begins to play. Arthur then begins to walk down a hall as he leaves a trail of bloody footprints behind him. While it is implied that the social worker was killed, she won't be added onto the count because, hey man, I don't know for sure. We don't assume on this show. Except for the times we have, but don't worry about that. Arthur then runs around the asylum dancing and being chased by guards as the movie comes to an end. How many kills did we count in the Joker's rise to fame? Well, let's get into the numbers and find out. In total, we counted 11 people who died in this film, with 2 women and 9 men. With a runtime of 122 minutes, that leaves us with a kill on average of every 11 minutes. Now, when we started my version of the kill count, I made the awards for coolest and lamest kills with Marvel films in mind. I will give the film those awards, but they won't make a whole lot of sense because they are related to Marvel. Since I am interested in broadening out to just comic book films in general, if anyone has any suggestions for awards that make sense for a non-Marvel comic book movie, and if you have any of those ideas rattling around in your brain, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your guys' suggestions, because I want to give awards that make sense for these projects. So please, if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. The completed Gauntlet Award for Coolest Kill goes to Murray, who I cannot show on screen right now for the kill. It's an incredibly shocking moment and arguably the movie's most memorable kill in just how graphic and horrifying it was. It's incredibly effective. The broken Ultron bot for lamest kill goes to the clown protester who gets shot on the subway. Not a bad kill, just not necessarily as impactful as the other kills in this film. And that's it. Joker came out back in 2019 and was a huge box office success. It ended up becoming the highest grossing R-rated film of all time and held that title until the release of Deadpool and Wolverine earlier this year. The sequel, Joker Foi Adieu, comes out very, very soon, and I will be covering that whenever it comes out on home release. But until then, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want to shout out my sister for helping count the kills in this video, and of course I want to shout out Dead Meat, who I stole this idea from. Please go give their channel a look if you haven't already. Their channel will be linked down in the description below. I never try and take credit for this idea. Please go support them because they make great content over there. So if you like horror movies, if you like this style of video, go give their stuff a watch. They make really awesome stuff. So yeah, go do that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you guys next time. So yeah, long live cinema.